Okay, Kathy, we're live.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the special meeting to order, Thursday, July 25th, 6:30 p.m. First I'd like to, acknowledgements. So the Township of Black River, the Township of Black River Matheson acknowledges the Apatipi Anishinaabeg Nation traditional territory. We live, play, and work here together, and together we shall build a strong and inclusive community. So again, just a reminder to all in attendance that the council meetings are recorded and will be made available on the township's website for viewing later. And also as a reminder, can you not hear me? Okay, sorry, my headset's not working, and let me see if I could turn up the microphone volume some. Okay, hopefully this is better. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. So again, just remind everyone that the meetings are recorded and will be available on the municipality's website, and that the meeting is being held in accordance with resolution, it's being held virtually in accordance with resolution 2024-36. Okay, so we have a motion to confirm the agenda. Please read it.
Be it resolved that the special council meeting of July 25th, 2024 be approved.
Approved and carried. Moving on to disclosures of pecuniary interest. I have no disclosures to declare. So the only item on the agenda is under unfinished business. And I'll turn it over for a presentation on the budget exercise report.
So, Madam Chair, we're just going to give a minute for IT to give the co-host permissions to the Deputy Treasurer, and he'll share his screen accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Hey. So, your worship, what we did was took the draft budget, and then we did two other options. So we had option A being what we had originally recommended, and then option B, which decreased the amount over inflation, and then option C was just going with inflation. We tried to look at service increases. The difficulty is, like, not all the time is an increased cost related to an increased service. For example, insurance, DSAB, public health levies are all increasing by more than the 3.9% stated CPI. So that does have an effect on the bottom line of the municipality. If we were just to stay at the 3.9, we'd actually be decreasing services because those costs in those areas have gone up and are actually beyond our control. The other thing that initially, when I looked at this, I didn't put any OPTA in. Our OPTA increase, so that how our taxable assessment has grown from one year to the next, is basically offset by the reduction that we have in our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. So we got 31 plus a little bit more in taxation if the rates were to stay the same, but on the same time we're losing 31,000 out of our Ontario or OM funding. we also, as we know, we're in the middle of an election, so that was an unexpected cost for 2024. So that whether that's an increase in service or not, it's still a cost that needs to be handled. If we look at recycling fees, there should be no recycling fees, but we're being charged some, and so it's being a little bit pessimistic as we move from the blue box programs to the producer responsibility programs. It's not supposed to cost municipalities anything, but probably being prepared for a little cost is better than having a surprise. Initially, there were some new programs in recreation. They weren't necessarily specified, just to increase the availability of community recreation programs to the citizens, and also using that as a way to attract more people like professionals and the like to our community. Payroll increases is a large item in this chart, but if you consider it includes the negotiated settlement with CUPE, it includes previously approved non-union pay grid, as well as converting the deputy treasurer to a deputy clerk treasurer, and replacing the apprentice mechanic with an executive assistant to the infrastructure manager. So not really any like increase, it's just how they're shaped a little bit different. One of the areas that was added as well was looking at an organizational staff review to make sure that we have the appropriate staff at the appropriate levels, and that will go a long way to ensuring that we're prepared moving into the future. It's not all bad news though. There's if you look at we are estimating that are in between provincial offenses revenues and an increase in investment income on bank accounts and the high interest savings account. We're actually budgeting for $160,000 more revenue than we budgeted for the year before. So there's some good news there. There was quite a bit of money that was earmarked for reserves last year at the end of the year, following a policy to transfer surplus. So this year, as we work through the year, as those reserves get allocated to different projects, then we might be coming back to council saying, hey, can we allocate some interest to these projects as well? So it just doesn't get lost in general funds if we're saving for certain projects. But presently, this is the way that it shows. While I'm talking about capital, briefly, the capital levy, as you can see from near the top, is estimated to be $131,000 for this year. And if you consider just for a moment the tax-funded programs amortization or on the useful life based on age, 684,000 was consumed last year. So we're not necessarily meeting that. And if we look at our capital operations, though, this year we have $3.5 million budgeted, 1.6 to come from senior levels of government, 1.2 to come from reserves, and 0.8 from debt. There's only like 35,000 out of that 3.5 million is expected to come from a tax levy. So we are using reserves, and we're trying to get grants where we can get grants to fund the capital operations. Once you use the reserve, though, it needs to get replenished, and so this year we can do it. Probably next year we can do it, but unless we start putting money aside in reserves, we'll have to start looking at the tax bases again. I would point out, though, that out of those 3.5 million, there's really only 2 projects that could be considered new. Like most of the projects, whether they be the asset management plan, the solar work being done at the arena, and the various equipment upgrades related to that, purchasing trucks that were budgeted last year, fuel delivery system. They're all continuations of projects. The two new projects is work at the boat launch, and there is a retrofit required in the arena compressor room, and that's required by ministry order. So, but those are the only two new projects. Everything else is a continuation, or, you know, the project started right near the end of last year when the grant came in. So, it's not like, you know, okay, we're gonna like spend it all at once. It's still being systematic, and actually there's probably not as many projects started just because of the abnormal nature of this year. So if we, so we're recommending option A, and that's sticking with basically the 10% increase that was approved in the multi-year moving forward. If we were to decrease that like down by about 3%, well, in order to get everything to shape out, you basically wouldn't be doing the new recreational programs. And in fact, we'd have to look at some service decreases. And did we go line by line looking where these decreases could come? No, but we just for magnitude, it would basically be taking half of our sidewalk repair out and also scaling back a little bit on our gravel. If all we did was the CPI and the capital increase, or capital levy, not only would the new programs be gone, the sidewalk repair budget would totally be gone. And as well, we'd have to scale back even further on gravel purchases. And when you look at sidewalk repairs, if you don't do so many meters of sidewalk every year or have a plan to get them done, it does have a way of getting away from you. And gravel does sink into roads over time. So unless we're have a plan on which roads are going to be getting gravel based on condition and traffic volumes, etc., then eventually there is no gravel left on the road, and then it's harder to grade. It becomes more spongy in the springtime and that as well. So in staff's opinion, doing that wouldn't be in the best interest of the municipality. Sticking with a plan that was laid out so that there could be ongoing major maintenance and capital investment into future years. And, you know, the recreational programming, every municipality that's of Black River Matheson size is competing for people to come live within, bring the skills that they have, and that as well. It's recreation that will set a community apart. You know, my ideas of having a croquet tournament probably won't fly here either, but it's just something that makes you different and has people say, hey, that's where I'd like to live. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on this. The rest of the report basically goes through the three scenarios and using Opta from the various classes to show how many properties would go up like between like 100 and 200, etc. So all the distribution reports are attached to this as well, for the three different scenarios.
Okay, thanks for that. I do have some questions. So on the new recreation programs, you indicated that you don't have a list of what those are. What I think we need a list of
what
are over last year.
Yeah, like last year there was some new programs, like there was more activities at the community center. There was an increase in the amount of senior bus trips and the like. I didn't get a list of what was being planned. I think it was like, hey, I'd like to do more programming. If I have money, then I will come up with programs that will match the money. So I didn't receive a list of, you know, I'd like to start an archery club, or I'd like to, you know, revamp a certain aspect of what was there before. It's important to remember that there are organizations that operate outside the municipality as well. Like like the Ag Society is not part of the municipal infrastructure, and I believe on the Ag Society land is where the curling club is, which is outside of the municipal structure as well. But looking and making sure that there's like Canada Day this year, by all accounts, Matheson had a very good celebration of Canada Day, right from the time the first person got to the park to the time the last person left after the fireworks. So think things along those lines. But I don't have a list of, you know, what projects and what the cost would be.
You know, 60, it's fine to see 63.5 as new programming, but what are we currently spending on recreation programs so that, you know, we can compare. Okay, if staff is asking for 63.5 additional funds, is that a 5% increase? Is that doubling the program that we had last year? What does that represent? So I think a report needs to come from recreation that says, okay, I requested an extra 63,005 in programming, and here's what that can get us. So here's what we're currently providing. But if we can, you know, and here's the you know, all the benefits that it's had. Like there was a really good staff report that came a few meetings ago that I had received. There was a lot of really good information in there. But how does this compare to what was done last year? And what else will 63.5 get us? I think is important to note. 63.5 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, but if you were spending 63.5 last year and you're asking to double that, then yeah, that's important to know. So that, I think we need more information on that. And then the new promotional material, what is that?
And that was sort of hand in hand with the new programs. Like initially it was like, I'd like to, you know, have like whether they be buttons or hats or shirts to promote the town. So instead of putting all that under the recreation, I split out, and we had promotional items under economic development as well. So I beefed up the economic development, but it's still like the more people see like a township logo somewhere, or like whether it be on a shirt or a hat or you know, buttons, like that's what the promotional material was expected to do.
Okay, another question is, so back where you have the inflationary increase, and then you have incremental, and then you've got the different percentages there. How does that percentage increase relate to the items that are listed that impact the budget? Like, are these, I'm seeing that, you know, under option A, you have a total service increase or decrease of 474,000, but then I'm seeing a capital levy, or no, sorry, an incremental increase of 5.56. Like, can you explain to me how these items, that the individual items listed, relate to that incremental of 5.56?
So at like the edit of this report, new generators, organizational staff review, and reduction in OMP were added. So if we were to remove those, then everything else would basically tie into the incremental. But I do see that Mr. Ray has his hand up, so I'll let him jump in as well.
So essentially, if you take the net of the service increases and service decreases, which is all service increases, so 474, from that you have to, that is incremental. It's incremental services. So we're only providing for 365,000 in that. The delta between those two numbers is going to have to come from the inflationary increase. That's the only way to describe it.
Okay.
And so the sorry, your worship, the only the inflationary increase is across the border, right? Across the entire all of our accounts together. So you know, there may be some effect if we do that, but we think that this recommendation in option A works the best.
Okay, I guess what I'm struggling with is I usually see, or I'm used to seeing, okay, when you're talking about the adjustments to increases to expenditures, I see those increases to those accounts or to those expenditures, and then you kind of work it out the net, like in your multi-year budget, right? That from the last meeting. I'm not kind of used to seeing, well, okay, let's just add 3.9% for inflation that may be applied to expenditures against a levy. So just tying that back to how you
Okay, so
looked at-
the treasurer can probably tell you, but the inflationary increase, that's in our budget policy.
so the policy states take the inflation and add it to the levy, not so much add it to the expenses that the inflation actually applies to.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing because you got a zero budget. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll just let Cassandra speak to it.
Okay.
Well, I can speak to it, but it's already been answered. It's in the policy and we apply it directly to, whether you apply it directly to the expenses, Madam Chair, you apply it to the overall levy increase, you've applied it. Because the policy doesn't state whether or not you should apply it to the overall levy or the each individual expense. How I've approached it in the past is I apply it actually to the expenses that on the overall levy.
In the way that I normally do it is I would use the 3.9, for example, as a target as I'm going through my expenses and seeing, what's gone up and what's gone down.
Okay.
And like trying to make sure that I come to that target, because we all know the typical municipality, we're closer to the construction index than the consumer price index. But still trying to go through and seeing if like the departments can actually function with the CPI consumer price index, looking at the various expenses. Chris?
So the other thing you'll note there too is that the insurance, DSAB, and public health unit alone far exceed the 3.9%.
Yeah.
And so you're already cutting into the 3.9% just in those costs, which means there's less of the inflationary change to go around the rest of the expenditures.
Okay. Okay, so looking back at the resolution that I passed on June 26th, sorry, I see that, okay, there were some matters that I wanted included in the next report. So one was consolidate the information from the budget presentation and budget guideline to kind of bring them all together. I was looking for the tax rate impacts. So we're not, I see that we've provided the distribution for the increases, but what do the actual tax rates look like? Like how much are the different classes going to go up?
Well, so that's in front of you with respect to the frequency distribution. So Craig, if we could just go up to the residential one there. So if you look at the first residential, which is the recommended option, so you're going to see a dollar increase of between $0 and $100 for 1,378 properties, which is 55% of the total. And the average change per property is $40. And that gives you the total dollar increase across all of them. So it doesn't really, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but the actual tax rate itself is, it's only a factor in this. What you have to look at, I think, is how many properties it affects. How does it affect those properties? And that's what the frequency distribution does. So I've found that over the years that these frequency distributions are extremely valuable tools to council members because they can understand what properties and what classes are affected the most.
Yeah, so the majority of the properties on option A we'll see a $40 increase.
Yeah, the vast majority, and actually, even if you go down to the next one, 403 at average change of 150, so you can see that it does lay it out really nicely, and that really, because when people listen about tax rate increases, the problem is sometimes based on what they might hear, they get that confused with the levy increase. Two different things. So in our case here, we're suggesting a levy increase of under 12%. Okay, so what does that mean? So we take the levy, we put it into the Opta system, and then we can, of course, tell you in the various areas what effects on these properties will have. And so, you've got every property class for the three options here in front of you. And I might add too, like when you're in the Opta system, you can actually drill down and see the actual properties where these increases are.
So obviously the seen as the residential class is the largest class, they will absorb the bulk of.
Yeah, if you go down to the Craig, can you just flip down to the pipeline? Because the pipeline gets hit pretty hard. And I think Cassandra, I think
Yeah.
pipeline ratios are about as high as they can go.
Yeah, there's no more room in the range of fairness to push it up. It's at its highest.
Yeah, so it's $234,000 of total dollar value increase, and residential is 300,000 and change. So there's the majority of your change right there.
Is the pipeline rate within the range or is it above like some others?
No, sorry, Madam Chair, to be clear, it's within the range. It's just the closest to the end as it can be.
Yeah, okay.
Frankly, I'd hate to know where Black River Matheson would be without the pipeline assessment.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities in northeastern Ontario are the same. Like there's a lot of reliance on the assessment that the pipeline has.
Okay, so the second item, okay, tax impacts, okay, you provided that. The information related to residential tax effort and comparator groups. Is that information going to be forthcoming? So I don't see that in the report.
Can I ask, Madam Chair, what that means? Do you want to compare it to other municipalities and what their residential impact is?
Well,
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so looking at how much, again, just trying to educate the public on where their tax levels fit in comparison to like how much they would pay based on their annual income, how much they would pay in comparison to other municipalities in the peer group. So if the municipality is at, if a residential taxpayer, average taxpayer is paying, 4%, how does that compare to the peer group? And is that high compared to, other municipalities in your area?
If I can,
Oh, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
So I've been able to obtain from the ministry comparative numbers for tax effort from about 10 different municipalities of similar size and characteristics. I mean, nothing is a perfect match.
Yep.
And it'll take me probably until the next meeting to put that together in some kind of I'm going to call it a chart that is easy to look at. But I think what people will see is that our tax effort is probably probably lower than a lot of the comparators. Which, you know, it doesn't mean much for people that live in Black River Matheson, but the fact is when you're trying to compare apples to apples, this is the type of thing that you're going to see.
Yeah, no, I recognize it's difficult because they're gonna have different levels of service, they're gonna have different you know, assessed values and, you know, different you know, some might have higher residential assessment than higher commercial, that sort of thing, definitely, but at least it's an indication to let the public know where what level of taxation they're paying compared to some others.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the big factors is going to be the amount of farmland or agricultural.
Yep.
So, of course, farmland is taxed at a quarter of the residential rate, notwithstanding if the farmland's got a house on there, it's taxed at the residential. But the rest of the land is at, you know, a quarter of that. And so you could go, if you looked at our assessment, you would see a very large number with farm assessment. Well, that's not the same as having that same number as commercial or residential. You got to divide that, you got to calculate that out using the rate, which is going to end up with 25% of what you actually would have if it was residential.
Yep. And the next one was I was looking for a budget timeline or a timeline for the budget to be considered and adopted before August 12th. So, and that is to set out, the intent of that was to set out timelines expected that the new council can expect to follow so that the municipality can adopt the budget within a reasonable time so that you can have tax bills issued in a reasonable time. So that report will come as well.
I would say we can bring that forward, but I mean, it's going to be up to the folks who are elected. The fact is they don't get sworn in until September the 3rd. By the time they receive some kind of training to understand, I guess, the municipal paradigm of finances, you know, you're looking at probably, let's call that the 3rd week of September. They're then going to want to sit down and look at the actual budget itself, and that could take several weeks. And then an adoption of the budget. Frankly, I don't see tax bills going out till November. And if we're really lucky, there would be a November 30th and a December 15th payment date.
No, I get that, but my whole intention is to try to do, because we could still have these discussions, is to, and I know that the new council can amend any of those dates, but it would be nice to have the discussions now so that we can try to set out a proposed timeline for them so that even now, as you know, we're having these discussions, they could hear it and they can, you know, once they take office, then they're better, I think, prepared to understand why staff is recommending that timeline.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We can do that.
Yep. And then also in there, along with the timeline and the, you know, setting out some possible dates for them. To me, I kind of see that as something that you would do at the beginning of the year. Okay, here's our scheduled dates on when we need to have meetings and when we would like, the municipality would like a final budget adopted, and then working backwards. So I kind of don't see it any different than that. And then, but in this one, also setting out for the new council so that they understand the implications of the delayed budget, whether or not there has been any need for borrowing to meet current expenditures and any other impacts on the budget delay, so that again, it's understood, or it will at least help them understand why you're putting in these timelines that you need.
Yeah, so the timelines in the real world, hopefully are in the budget policy. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, we have Cassandra, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think an original start date of sometime in September for the next year.
Yeah.
We're not going to make that this year again. It's going to skip. And obviously with our present situation, we were sort of forced into the situation that we have now. But hopefully for the 2026 budget, we'll be able to start that off at the appropriate time frame.
Well, I
If
think having
I
some
can.
discussions, oh, sorry, Ms. Child, were you gonna say something?
All I was going to say, Madam Chair, is I don't see the point of creating the timelines. The new council will come in and they're going to want to start from scratch. Because you're basing your assumption that they're also watching all of these council meetings, but while watching them, they may have questions that they can't ask right now. So I see it as us restarting the entire budget process come September 3rd. But like the CAO has mentioned, they have to be trained first.
Okay, I
my
don't
2
see
cents.
that it's a waste of time setting up a suggested timeline. Yes, it's something that they can amend. But at least if we're looking and doing a staff report and looking at some reports now, they will, as soon as they come on, they'll be able to see it. They'll have all the information readily available. And if hopefully they follow whatever timeline that has been set, but, or proposed, but at least, talking about it now and putting some dates out there now will, I think will help them get well underway in setting up their budget.
So can I ask, Madam Chair, what type of dates are we looking at then? Because I don't understand then the timeline you're asking us to set up. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm really trying to understand. So you're wanting a timeline with dates. And I would assume based on each date, you would want a discussion, a budget business discussion. That's where I'm struggling to understand what that layout looks like. Because in my mind, that layout looks like we're restarting from the beginning.
No, I think if you look at the end, so if you're thinking, and ideally, if you're thinking that say October 15th would be an ideal time for the new council to adopt a budget, because there's things you have to do afterwards, right? So start from that October 15th and then work it back. So do we need, how many meetings do we need within that time? And for the discussion, and what will be discussed generally at those meetings. So the first one, it'll be combining all of this information that we've discussed and that staff have pulled together already. And I think putting it all in one report where it's all consolidated, I think would be beneficial for them. And then that's kind of your start. You have those discussions. Yes, they're going to have more questions than I'll have, just them being new and being in the community. So I think you'd have to build in a few meetings, and if you don't need all of the meetings, well, then that's great. Then you could adopt it early, or if you need more, then the new council can adopt or can request more meetings. But I think if you kind of lay it out where looking back at your original timeline that you would typically follow, and how could you fit that in, knowing that you have all of this information already? How can you fit that in, knowing when you're, like, say it is an October 15th deadline? How do you fit that in between their beginning term and the 15th or whatever date you decide would be an optimal time? But I think it's important for staff to put that in a report, and we look at that now and have the discussions so that hopefully the candidates are listening and hearing this, or at least see it on these, the staff reports on the municipality's website, so that they can see and understand what's coming and what will be expected of them, whoever gets elected. So to me, I'm looking at it as, let's look at when your drop dead deadline is to adopt a budget, and then let's work backwards to see when you would have to have the meetings. And what would need to, generally what should be discussed at each of those.
Well, if I can, Madam Chair, drop dead deadline, we've passed that. That was in our budget policy,
Yeah,
which we have
I
not
know
followed.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, the other thing too, Madam Chair, is that when you're explaining it, I'm only hearing you say 2 dates. And again, I'm hearing you say hypothetically take October 15th and then back it up 1 meeting to present to them basically a report of everything we've discussed. So
No, I
that's what
didn't
I'm
say
hearing
one
when you
meeting.
say,
identify the
so-
meetings that you would need.
Okay.
so again, as long as, if the CAO or the deputy treasurer understand, again, because they're the ones, especially the deputy treasurer, he's the one carrying this out. Because I see it that we're at the end of the road. I don't see how much further we can, more information we can provide. So as long as the deputy treasurer understands, because again, I had struggled with the motion the last meeting we had. So I don't know if the deputy treasurer has any comments.
Well, like,
No, but it's gonna make it more difficult, because Opta basically shuts down August 31st, so unless we can, sweet talk them
Opta's not shutting down August 31st. That's
to get,
just your
to
deadline.
get the tax rate in.
That August 31st is a date that if you don't get your tax rates in there by that date, the municipality
Yeah.
will have its own PF withheld, but you can still go and input tax rates after
Yeah.
that date.
But it does hamper the ability of the municipality to keep the OMP payments coming in because we're not gonna meet that deadline.
Well, you're not
the-
gonna meet the PF deadline anyways because the FIR isn't in.
The FIR can be done in about 3 days, so. The audit procedures are actually starting, so like we'll be.
Well, we're in the
Yes, sir.
situation we're in and the tax rates can't get inputted by August 31st. But that doesn't mean that you can't input them after that. The two have nothing to do with each other. So in order to, I think, prepare the next council, I think what we need is we need to consolidate all of the information into one report. We need to have I think the comparison, looking at the tax effort, explain that. And seeing it just kind of in one report, you have all the information there. I think it's just putting it in a format that it'll be easy for them, for the new council to understand and hopefully digest. And I could see that we probably need to have one more meeting to look at the consolidated information. And as noted, before, I'm subject to the restricted acts. That's a position that I'm taking in reading the act, and I won't be able to adopt the budget, but there's nothing preventing us from having the conversations and, reviewing the reports. But I also think, and I looking at the multi-year budget that you had presented at the last meeting, I think too that for council, I think and maybe to help them better understand what things are included in transportation and what's included in health services. I think what may be beneficial for them too is to look, these are the functional groups or categories that are listed in the FIR, but if the subcategories can be included with budget items there too, so that transportation services, well, what's included in that? We know that that's snowplow, winter control. We know that that is, maintaining your gravel roads. So if there's a way that potentially, I'm not talking about a line by line, because I don't think, council shouldn't be looking at a line by line, but if there's more information that can be provided in a report to explain those to council, I think would go a long way as well. Mr. Ray?
Yeah, we'll provide that. I think we're going down the road of death by 1,000 cuts, but it's very easy to provide, of course. And we can
Again,
have
I'm
that for, have that for the next meeting.
Yeah, again, I'm not talking like really lot of detail, because I agree with you, like we don't need to know how many paper clips are being bought. But I think it's important to know, well, how much does winter control cost? How much are you spending on the plowing of the roads in the winter and the maintenance of the gravel roads in the summer, that sort of thing. Not granular, but just a little bit, break it down, even looking at the Schedule 40 of the FIR, I think might be helpful.
Yeah, okay. I understand.
So Madam Chair, if I can, what you just asked for is not in your original motion, so you'll table a motion tonight to give us direction to bring that back?
Yes, so I do have, one here. Sorry. Sorry, I just wanna look back at what we adopted, or I adopted last meeting. Okay, so do you want me to just send it to you, Cass? Or just read it out? For a
Yeah,
little bit-
unless you'd like,
Yep, you want me to send it?
yeah, you can send it.
And then you can let me know if you have any concerns or issues with how it's worded.
First, I'll let you know when I receive it.
Okay, I just sent it. Oh. Sorry, I think I sent you the wrong one.
I think you sent me the one you had sent the last meeting.
Yeah, sorry, I sent the wrong one. Sorry about that. It will be similar. No,
Yeah, I have it.
okay,
Would you like me to read the motion, Madam Chair?
yes, please. No,
That the minister,
I'm still thinking
Is
the
it-
second one is the second one I sent you is the one from last week, last month. Look at the first one. It does include some
Look
of
at-
the same information. It just looks funny because it's two different fonts.
so which one am I reading?
The
I'm sorry,
first one
Madam
is-
Chair. The first one?
Yeah, that has the A, B, and then second A should be C.
Okay,
The formatting was messed
Okay.
up.
okay, I'll read the motion, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Be it resolved that the minister appointee directs the deputy treasurer to provide a written report incorporating information from the operating and capital multi-year levy budget presented on June 26, 2024. The information provided in the budget report presented July 26, 2024.
Sorry,
And the following
no, go ahead. I made a mistake. It should be June 25th, not 26th.
Okay. I'll also correct that in the minutes. The following information from resolution 2024-31 passed on June 25th, 2024. Compare the 2023 departmental budgets with the 2024 proposed budgets. Set out information related to residential tax effort and comparisons to peer groups. Include a further timeline to the budget to be considered and adopted after the August 12th, 2024 by-election by the new council, and include suggested deadlines for the new council to adopt the tax rate bylaw with regular and/or special meetings proposed to achieve that deadline, and set out impacts on the budget delays such as additional borrowing to meet current expenditures if that is needed. And that this report back also include a more detailed multi-year budget report that includes budget figures by subcategory or service per functional class. And that this written report be included on the agenda for a special meeting to be held on a date set by the clerk to take place before August 12th.
Yep.
If I can, Madam Chair, just on a matter of procedure, you set the date. The procedural bylaw states it's the mayor that sets the date. It wouldn't be the clerk. So if you'd be comfortable just amending that last one, I would check with you. I would check with you on dates.
How about we just
But
say
you
on a date to be set prior or on a date to be held prior to August 12th. And then we could
That's
talk
fine.
about the proper date. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's just because that's contradictory to our procedural bylaw.
Yeah, yeah. Nope, perfect. Thanks for catching that.
And again, Madam Chair, I think I raised it the last time because some of these items are a repetition from the previous motion. Some of these things we've already done. Because the first presentation, we did compare the 2023 departmental budgets
Yes,
with the
take that
2020.
out, sorry. Yeah, take that out and really, yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
so I'll make the necessary amendments, Madam Chair. You'll see it in the resolution that I sent to you.
Okay.
Again, the intent won't change. It'll just be to remove the comparison from the 2023 departmental budgets to the 2024 proposed. The dates of June 26th to June 25th, and that the final statement in relation to a meeting before August 12th, I'll remove the word clerk and I'll make the statement make sense.
Yep, okay, thanks. I think I could just say on it, to be held prior to August 12th. And
I can make sure to do that.
We'll discuss the date that fits for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess you just need the formal approval and carry.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, I approve the resolution and it's carried. All right, there are no other items on the agenda. Can I have the resolution for the bylaw to confirm the proceedings, please?
That bylaw number 2024-30 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Black River Matheson be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 25th day of July, 2024.
Approved and carried. And please read the motion to adjourn, please.
That this special meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:26 p.m.
Approved and carried. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.